It looks like Christian Watson has a chance to come back early and throw a major wrench into the Packers' receiver plans in 2025.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets if that first $50 bet wins. Christian Watson, ahead of schedule, according to Matt LaFleur, or at least they're cautiously optimistic about his timeline. And then we saw Christian Watson out at minicamps, warming up, jogging around, seemed to be moving pretty well, but you can't really tell in those little, you can jog and, move. It's the sprinting, it's the cutting at full speed. Those are the things that the knee just doesn't have the stability to do coming off ACL for a long time. It takes a while to get that strength back. But then he posted a video on his Instagram, and he looks to be moving pretty well. Cutting, he runs a little, looks like, kind of a wheel route, but it's more just, hey, can you move angularly? Can you move laterally? Can you flex those ankles and put a little pressure on that knee as you move on a diagonal? And he did it. Now, is he running all out? No. Is he running even 60%? Probably not. Is he incapable of doing that? I don't know why I would have any reason to think that. We just didn't see it. If he can be back early, it all of a sudden puts the Packers in a position where they're like, what do we do with this receiver rotation? How do you incorporate all of these guys? Part of the appeal, frankly, of drafting someone like Matthew Golden was he was going to get 3 months to play the Christian Watson role before Christian Watson turned up to try and play that same role. And then by then you hope Golden has mastered some other positions. Maybe he can play X receiver isolated by himself. Maybe he can play a little slot. He can do some more different kinds of things. If Christian Watson can come back early, is Savion Williams just mothballed for his rookie season? What happens then? And I hate to bring this up for like the millionth time in this offseason. But let's say we get to August, and I'm talking about early August, and it looks like Christian Watson is going to be able to, if not by opening day, be back sooner than later. Does that embolden the Packers into a trade? Does that, like we were talking about, okay, does Matthew Golden looking really good or Savion Williams looking really good or the pair of them combined looking really good talk them into something? But what if it's actually just staring us in the face? What if Christian Watson can come back sooner than we expect? What if they know by August, hey, look, this guy can be back by the first week in October? And remember, if he starts the year on PUP, physically unable to perform, he only has to miss the first 4 games of the season. I would expect it is a near lock he's going to start the year on PUP. But right now, I mean, it's late June. And he seems to be like pert near ready. I doubt they would give him much run up in camp. And I don't think they would activate him off PUP because then you start the clock until the season starts. But if you do that, right? If you activate him off PUP before the season starts, he might not have to sit out any games. If he's on PUP when the season starts, then that's when that 4-game window has to be met. that in itself sets up some questions for the Green Bay Packers. What if he does look good? How do you handle it then? And so I could certainly see a scenario where we're looking up in July, late July, early August, a week or two into camp, and it has nothing to do with Matthew Golden. It has nothing to do with Savion Williams. And you're hearing, teams have called about Romeo Doubs. Teams have called about Dontavian Wicks. And you gauge the trade market there. Now, I think, again, I've always said that I think Doubs is the guy that makes the most sense from he would be desirable to other teams and the Packers would be more willing to give up on him or give him up in a trade. I don't think they're giving up on anybody if you trade them. I think Wicks still has more potential to grab. But all of the ramifications part of this aside, like what does it mean for player B and player C and player D? Having Christian Watson would be really, really valuable. Like it does change the math. It's one thing to have a really fast rookie receiver out there on your offense and for everyone to go, we don't know if this guy's actually as dangerous as his 40 time. He's got to prove it. So I could certainly see a scenario where for the first month of the season, 6-8 weeks of the season, before if it was going to take until, Halloween or later for Christian Watson to be back, the teams just didn't respect the deep speed of Matthew Golden, or at least inconsistently respected it unless and until he proved you had to respect it. Well, what if he can come back week 1? What if he can come back week 5? That changes the capabilities of your offense. That changes because for whatever you think of Christian Watson, watch the tape and you will see a player that affects defenses. There are so many plays where his deep speed takes 2 and opens up the middle of the field for someone else, where it is Watson's gravity that makes the play even though he doesn't get the ball. We don't have any idea if Matthew Golden can actually generate that sort of gravity. And so getting him back sooner than later would have huge impacts on this offense right now. And before you think it's crazy, I understand a different position. But Brian Bulaga tore his ACL and was back in 9 months. We've seen this before. Guys coming back 9 months. Adrian Peterson tore his ACL, came back in 9 months. And, I don't think it is out of bounds to suggest that it could be the work that Christian Watson put in last year. And wouldn't it be just juicy, deliciously ironic? If the guy who couldn't stay healthy, his body has betrayed him over the course of his career, comes back sooner than anyone thinks from this ACL injury. But it is possible to me. Remember when I wrote that story for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, where he went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison and they did the body scans and the evaluations on his gait and his running and all this stuff. And they tried to find some ways to balance him out and get his body maximally sturdy. And then, he has this ACL anyway, but has the healthiest season of his career. It wouldn't surprise me if he comes back and tells us, hey, I think that work and the evening out of my legs actually set me up to succeed in this way because I already had worked on that strength in my legs, that I'd already evened out the asymmetry. And so I started from a better place than I would have had I not taken care of that. I don't think it is crazy at all. And I don't think it's crazy for him to be back early in the season. I don't think it's crazy that he starts the season on the roster, on the 53, like not on PUP. Like they activate him before the season because they think week 1, week 2, week 3 maybe, he could be ready to go. It wouldn't be a superhuman feat of recovery. It wouldn't be record breaking for that to happen. It would be on the early side, but we have seen ACLs be 9-month injuries and we've seen them be 18-month injuries. And usually it is the second year after the ACL where you look like yourself again. But we have seen players come back and play pretty well 9 months off ACL. Christian Watson being one of the guys to do it would be pretty great. And what a wonderful turn in his career. And it would be a boon for the Packers. Now, would it create some headaches? Would it create some hey, we got to figure this out? Yes, but that's a champagne problem in this case. Now, speaking of a champagne problem, the Packers have a lot of offensive linemen. We've talked about this trade idea. I wonder if we're thinking of the wrong trade piece. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the greens, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in the game with your friends while they're, getting sunburn. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's a fast way, make a little extra fun out of a sporting event that maybe isn't, like, a golf tournament that doesn't have the highest stakes. Well, you have a little action on it. All of a sudden, it becomes a little bit more fun, doesn't it? Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it easy to feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet hits. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I know I told you that a big trade is not coming for the Packers with the pass rush. Trey Hendrickson is not coming. But what if the Packers have actually stumbled into the best trade chip they could offer? And the best trade chip maybe anyone would be willing to offer. Elgton Jenkins does not want to play center without assurances in his contract that he's not going to be cut in a year. But he is under contract, which would why he would be cut. He is under contract this year and next year, and he is one of the best interior offensive linemen in the NFL. I can understand why the Bengals, for example, would not, on the last year of the contract of someone like Rasheed Walker, be that interested in a one-for-one swap, especially for a young player. What about a win-now veteran who can play multiple positions across your offensive line, could play tackle in a pinch, could play either guard spot or center, and immediately come in and make your offensive line materially better? And it's getting you out of a jam with a player who's not happy that he's there, not happy with the way that he's being treated. And you can just say, hey, look, we saw an opportunity. Rather than framing it as we didn't want to pay this guy, then it becomes we saw an opportunity to make our football team better. We like the investments that we made in Myles Murphy and Shamar Stewart. We wanted to go young on the edge and add this veteran offensive lineman. And so we made this deal with Green Bay. This was suggested to me by a listener, Will. Appreciate you, Will, for sending this my way. And it was something that hadn't occurred to me, frankly. But the more I started to think about it, the more I thought, hey, this actually makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Now, I have and will continue to insist, the smart money is on the Packers doing something with the contract of Elgton Jenkins. I think the thing that makes the most sense for the Packers is for them to get this contract worked out, to extend him in some way, some assurances that he's going to be on the team next year, or at least pay him more this year to compensate him for potential lost future wages. Teams don't tend to operate that way, but they could. But if this does grow contentious, because you may have the best intentions. I think the Packers thought they were going to bring back Aaron Jones when Aaron Jones and Green Bay were negotiating. I think the Packers always thought Devontae Adams was coming back until he wasn't. And so this could degrade quickly. Now, for all those same reasons, it makes sense for the Packers to get this done. For all the same reasons, it would make sense for the Bengals to trade for Elgton Jenkins, it would make sense for the Packers to just keep him. He's really good. You know he's really good. You don't have to do any shuffling. That being said, the reason this is interesting to me is it clarifies the Jordan Morgan conundrum if you think Sean Rhyan can play center. If you think Sean Rhyan can play center and play center at a solid level, now Jordan Morgan is just your, I don't have to compete with anyone right guard. Rasheed Walker is your left tackle of the now. He doesn't have to look over his shoulder. He can just go play. We're going to talk about that with Joe Thomas later this week, the constant competition, all that stuff. And then you have Anthony Belton, who is your left tackle of the future, who gets to sit for a year. He gets to come in and play if and when you have the injury from Rasheed Walker. He may have one, he may not. You're locking up Zach Tom. We heard Brian Gutekunst say that's what he wants to do. So if he's your right tackle, where does Anthony Belton fit in on all this? If he's not a guard, right now it looks like he's a tackle. So it makes the most sense for Jordan Morgan to be your right guard, which is all of that is to say the Packers are holding all the cards with the Elgton Jenkins conversations right now because they're like, well, don't show up. Don't come to camp. We've got options. Sean Rhyan can play center. Jordan Morgan can play right guard, and you can sit out and not get paid. And that may seem callous, but that's how the NFL works. So they're in a very good position. All these discussions that I've had over the years about, the Packers, they have more playable players on their offensive line. They have 7 guys probably that they feel good about playing. Plenty of teams that don't have 5 guys that they feel comfortable playing. Well, that plays to their advantage in a major way in a scenario like this. So could they then take that leverage that they have to say, Elgton Jenkins, I don't know what you're under contract, my dude. So either show up and play the position that we are paying you to play, or I'm sure we can get something wonderful for you. There are plenty of people out there who would be willing to pay your salary, but then you're going to have to, figure it out this year. And then you're going to have to acclimate in camp and you're going to have to get up to speed quickly. Now, maybe he takes that deal. You get more assurances. If someone is trading for you, it's probably because they're willing to take on your contract. Pretty good, pretty useful. It could end up being a win-win for everybody if the Packers really don't want to do anything with the contract. And it seems like the Bengals don't really want to pay the high end that Trey Hendrickson is asking for. And maybe the Packers don't either. So that could be just a deal breaker for the trade. Of course, you got to pay the money. But it could also make sense if they would be willing to do it. And it would make sense. Trey Hendrickson is good enough now, and for the next 3 years, we've talked about the track record of these top of market deals. Even if you sign a top of market deal and it's 2 years and we'll see, Trey Hendrickson is still in a place in his career where he can be productive and he wins in a way. Yes, he's very athletic for his size, doesn't get the credit because of the way he looks, of course. But he is very athletic. And he was one of those sleeper picks. Justice Mosqueda was like, if you just look at the testing data, he's a pass rush sleeper in the draft class. I remember Justice being on this. And then he's developed into this player. You don't always know. Someone takes that raw ability and turns it into something. His game is going to age incredibly well because he is such a sound technical player. He studies film effectively. He's such a polished player. And then he has that athleticism. He can convert speed to power. He is a game changer. You're talking about the Packers and not having enough kinds of players who can tilt the field. He can do that. And you're giving up, in this case, a player that you don't really see a long-term future with anyway, it seems like. I don't know. That makes sense to me. And speaking of making sense to me, Brian Gutekunst, in that cornerback conversation we had the other day, he was saying that they have 3 corners they feel really good about. He's not sure how many teams can say that. That got me wondering. I'll wonder aloud next on Locked On Packers. Last week, we talked about the weirdness in the Packers cornerback room. And they have these lunch pail guys. They don't have anyone that's special. Nate Hobbs, solid player. Keyshawn Nixon, solid player. Though I would say a tier down in terms of solid. Carrington Valentine, probably in that same tier of solid player. And I thought he took a real step forward in the second half of last year as a playmaker. We saw him start to create some interceptions. I don't know what it is about the Packers defensive backs and taking interceptions out of the end zone when they have no business doing that, but that is a thing that they have, like to do. And what Gutekunst said was the point that I've kind of made about the offensive line for years with the corners. Hey, we have three guys we really like. How many teams can say that? Okay, so I just thought, let's look in the division. The Detroit Lions have DJ Reed. They just signed him to a big free agent deal. He's a good player. Terran Arnold was a first-round pick last year, but I thought had his fair share of struggles. Most rookies are bad, and almost all rookie corners are bad. But I don't know that they can feel great about that right now. Was Terran Arnold better last year than Carrington Valentine or Keyshawn Nixon or Nate Hobbs? Maybe yes, maybe no. But certainly unproven is the way that you would characterize that. And Key and Carrington and Nate Hobbs have all certainly played more football than Arnold. So from a proven standpoint, they have more time under task at least. Now Amik Robertson, he played well last year and is a good player. He's little and gets hurt a lot. They bring in Devontae Maddox. Okay? Ennis Rakestraw was a draft pick last year, second round pick. We don't really have any idea what he is. So do they have three guys that they go, yeah, these three guys we know are going to be there. They're going to be healthy, and we feel good about that. Now, of course, you can never predict injuries. But Jair Alexander's probably going to get hurt. One of the reasons why the Packers moved on is because they're like, we don't want to deal with that anymore. Well, this has been a problem with Amik Robertson. DJ Reed is hitting that part of the cornerback age curve where you start to worry. And he's an undersized player to begin with. So do I think the Lions have better corners than the Packers? I mean, I kind of do in the aggregate, but do they have three guys that they feel better about than the Packers have? I don't know. Now they have the safeties. Much like the Packers, they have the safeties that make them feel differently. And then they have Aiden Hutchinson up front that can just wreck a game single-handedly. If he's healthy, we know that's there for him. The Vikings, so who's playing for them? Who's playing? Everyone talking about, they had this great offseason. Jonathan Allen they bring in. Javon Hargrave they bring in. You like some of the players. Ryan Kelly, Will Freeze. They brought in some good players. Who is playing corner for them? Isaiah Rodgers, who was a nice depth piece on an Eagles team that was starting two rookies? Is it going to be Jeff Okudah, who they brought in off the scrap heap? Is it going to be Mekhi Blackman, who they brought in these free agent guys that we assume are going to start over them? Like our lads, the depth chart has him over Mekhi Blackman. Even if it's going to be Mekhi Blackman, he is not proven to be a great player by any means. Byron Murphy is really the only corner that they feel any confidence in, I would think. We're just looking in the division here. With the Bears, of course, Jalen Johnson, star. Kyler Gordon, ascending player. Rough as a rookie early in his career, but has gotten much better. But Tyreek Stevenson, Bears fans want to run him out of town on a rail. And it's not just the Hail Mary. He was very inconsistent last year. I don't know how you could feel good about that starting spot. Yes, no doubt, that's the guy. So that's just in your division. You're at least as confident as every other team and probably more confident than two in the three guys in aggregate. So maybe that's the wrong way to think about it. Because the Bears probably more confident in Jalen Johnson than any Packer Like if we're going to fill the confidence tank, right? But if coverage is a weak link system, who goes into the season feeling like they have a weak link? If you're the Vikings, you have to have some worries that you have a weak link. If you're the Lions, you worry that you might have a weak link. And the Bears, you worry you might have a weak link. Now the Packers, they might have weak links. But last year, this same group of guys was awesome. Now, okay, you want to expand this a little bit. Like, yeah, okay, the Eagles, they probably feel better about their 3 than the Packers. And that's the team ultimately you're chasing. Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. But Darius Slay not in the building anymore? Keely Ringo is going to start? Adoree Jackson, the free agent, is going to start? Like, you feel better about Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean than anyone the Packers have. But can any of these other guys play for them? I don't know. And then you're transitioning, new safety, CJ Gardner-Johnson out, Sidney Brown and Reed Blankenship, that's your 2. Now they drafted Andrew Makuba. We'll see if he can get on the field for them, but I don't know. And then the Rams, absolutely not. The Rams they might have 3 holes at corner on their team. The Commanders, that's a conversation, but Marshawn Lattimore is never healthy. Never, ever healthy. At least not for any extended period of time. Mikey Samerstill is a nice player. Now they signed Jonathan Jones. They drafted Trey Amos. So they've brought in some players. But are they confident that that's going to work? I'm just saying. I understand why you would be skeptical, for sure. I understand it. But I also understand why, if you're the Packers, why, if you're Brian Gutekunst, you would frame it that way. Like, hey, we're more confident in our guys than most teams are in the 3 that they have. Now, I will continue to insist that even if that's true, it would be really nice, and I mean really nice, to have one more guy you felt pretty good about. It doesn't seem like the Packers have an appetite to do that. So here we are. All right, we're going to be back on Wednesday. Joe Thomas is going to join me. We're going to be nerding out over offensive line, but getting, I think, great player perspective from him on the shuffling along the offensive line, what you need as a coaching staff to have good offensive linemen, what it's like to have to compete for your job every single rep of every single day. Joe's a Hall of Famer for a reason. He's great. And looking forward to that conversation. That'll be out on Wednesday. Follow me on the social medias, Peter_Bukowski on X and on Instagram. Wherever you find podcasts, go subscribe to us there. Go watch us on our YouTube page so you can stay locked on Packers.